esteemed Sayyid, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. وعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم باستشهاد أبي الأحرار الإمام أبي عبد الله الحسين عليه السلام. My dear mu'mineen, in the few minutes that I have, as we promised in this series, in the next few nights of Aza and mourning, that we will try to shed highlight on some of the virtues of Imam al-Hussain. And yesterday we started talking about one of the greatest virtues, and the fact that Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam was a man of nobility, of noble character. And we went a little bit into what nobility means and some sayings of Imam al-Hussain about nobility and a few examples from the stories of Imam al-Hussain that demonstrate that. Today we're going to focus on one of the magnificent characteristics of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, and that is his generosity and giving. What does generosity entail? When we say somebody is generous, what comes to our mind? Right away comes to our mind a person who is giving money, right? Generosity is that, but it's more than just that. Generosity includes sharing one's resources, so not just wealth, but also time, also knowledge, sharing feelings. So sharing resources, it's not just material resources, meaning money or monetary. It also includes you donating the time that you have. And remember, my dear friends, that everything that we have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in order to thank Him for what He has given us, the way we thank Him is to give back. Give back what Allah has given us. So if He gave you wealth, give back the wealth to others. If He gave you time, free time, give back to others. So being generous includes sharing what Allah has given you in terms of wealth, not just monetary, but time and knowledge as well. So my dear friends who come and volunteer their time and knowledge for the Wilaya school and for other Islamic schools on the weekend, that is a form of generosity. Generosity also includes having compassion and empathy. So that entails understanding others, what they're going through. You're never going to be a generous person if you don't have that compassion and that empathy to the other person. You know how they feel, what they're going through. You are connected to what others are experiencing. You have that kindness and warmth in your heart. A person who has kindness and warmth and empathy and compassion will definitely be a person who's going to be generous and giving. A person who's generous and giving is by default a person who has the quality of being selfless, always putting others in front. He's willing to sacrifice for the sake of others. So putting others first, their needs first over their own needs. So generosity includes that. That's the person who's selfless is always a person who sacrifices. He's a person who's always willing to sacrifice for the sake of others. A person who does that, but does that while they are also humble and are in humility. That's another characteristic of a person who's generous. A person who's generous is a person who gives, but at the same time gives with humility and humbleness. A person who's generous, what does that also entail? A person who's generous is a person when they give to have an impact on others. They give to be effective in terms of that impact on others. So they're not just going to give anything for the just sake that I gave. You know, just fill up the box that I gave. No, they have a long-term strategy to ensure that the person or whatever they're giving, the resource that they're giving is something that's impactful, something that's meaningful, something that is effective. So they're always thinking about how to sustain the other person, how to sustain the entity that they're helping. So always long-term plan and not just a short-term plan in terms of generosity. A generous person is not a person who's not going to just give once in a blue moon, once a year that they'll give. A person who's truly generous is a person who is sustainful in terms of their generosity, their They're always giving. It's a 24-hour, 365-day kind of a thing for them. And what else does generosity entail? Generosity by default includes within it gratitude. The reason why a truly generous person gives is because they are grateful slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because they're grateful, the way they thank Allah for the bounties is by giving back, is by thanking Allah through serving others. So that's what generosity, or these are different aspects of what generosity entails. And so let's look and see what Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, who we love and who is the great exemplar of generosity, what he has said about generosity. One of the sayings of Imam Hussain, he says, give to others that what you love for yourself. For that is the foundation of righteousness. So he says, give to others. But give to others what? That which you value. That which is meaningful for you. You don't don't think that you're really, truly generous when you're giving the leftovers. When you're giving the thing you're not using anymore. Inshallah, you'll get the reward for that. But the essence of generosity, Allah mentions it in the Quran, and Imam al-Hussain says it here. When you give something that's dear to you, that's really valuable to you, that is the essence of generosity. Also, Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, on the virtue of charity, he says, listen to this, my dear friend, he says, charity given in secret extinguishes the wrath of the Lord. When you give charity, he says give charity, but he described how. He says when it's secret. Keep that in mind. I know sometimes we say the sponsoring family so-and-so. In our fundraisers, the person raised, I'm going to donate this, I'm going to donate that. Okay, but you want to gain the highest thawab in giving when it's done in secret. When the donor is anonymous. When nobody knows that you've done it. And one of the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, he says that if you give with your right hand, your left hand doesn't know. To that extent, it's a figure of speech. Generosity is the key to prosperity and success. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam says, you give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will multiply whatever you give many, many times. Imam al-Hussain says, teach others what you know, for knowledge is a gift that increases when it's shared. Another form of generosity. It's not just money like we said. It's anything that you have, a resource that you have that Allah has given you that you give, and you give profusely. On the virtue of giving shelter to somebody else, Imam Hussain says, whoever shelters a believer, houses a believer, or sponsors the housing of a believer, Allah will shade him with his shade on the day of judgment. Imam al-Hussain also says, and I'll end with this, in terms of some of his many sayings, he says, providing water to the thirsty is like quenching the thirst of the heart. Providing that water. And we saw yesterday in one of the stories I gave, which was a story of generosity, but it showed his noble characteristics, that he gave thirst to his enemy. But subhanAllah, look what those enemies did to him in terms of the food and water, and especially the water, that he died as a thirsty man, him and his children and his followers. In the few minutes that we have before the Adhan al-Maghrib, a few stories, and there are so many, my dear friends, about the generosity of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. You saw his sayings, some of the selections of his sayings. The Imams and the Prophet, they don't just say, they don't just preach, but they practice what they preach. And you find that historians and narrators, they narrate countless stories that show us and demonstrate to us the nature of the generosity of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, one time a man came to him for help. The narrators say, without hesitation, Imam Hussain provides him with financial assistance, with food, with clothing, with water, and he treats that person, the narrators say, he treats them with such kindness and such respect and such care while he's doing that. So not just throwing the stuff to the person, the people who are asking, but doing that with such respect and with such love. Many, many stories. I'm going to go and highlight one of the stories where Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, where historians state that he would carry a sack full of bread and food and money in the darkness of the night. Historians narrate that. He would carry that in the darkness of the night. Nobody's watching, people are asleep, and he would go to the alleyways in Kufa or in Medina where he would be living, where he knows that there are people who are needy, so that he gives to them and they don't see his face. Who does that remind you of? His father, Imam Ali alayhi salam, right? And he reminds you of all the Imams. But this is the beautiful quality of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam and his generosity. Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam had a keen eye for treating the orphans, especially those who had no parents or one of the parents. He would take care of them and he would be kind to them. One Bedouin came to him and told him, he came to him and saluted him and told him that I have a need. I have a need. He says, I have heard from your grandfather that he used to say, whenever you have any need, ask it from 4 persons. This Bedouin is saying. He's saying, I heard from the Prophet to ask from 4 types of people. From a noble Arab, or the benevolent who gives happily, number 2, or the people of the Quran, Ahlul Quran, or from someone who has an elegant face. And of course the Bedouin is smart. He's talking about Imam al-Hussain, and he's making Imam al-Hussain hear that. So then when Imam al-Hussain heard that, he asked him, what do you want? What do you need? The Bedouin wrote his requirement on the sand. And Imam al-Hussain said, I heard my father say that goodness, Imam al-Hussain saying my father, Imam Ali, says that goodness is divided or is proportionate, is related to divine recognition. Okay? So Imam al-Hussain said to the Bedouin, he said, so I want to ask you 3 questions. If you reply to one of them, I shall give you 1/3 of what I have. And if you answer my second question, I will give you 2/3 of what I have. And if you answer the 3rd question, I will give you everything that I have on me. And so the Bedouin said, go and ask the question. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. And so Imam al-Hussain asked this man, he says, what is the best deed? So the Bedouin said, believe in Allah, believe in God. And so the Imam al-Hussain says, what is the way of salvation for man? And so the Bedouin says, reliance, trust in God. And so then Imam al-Hussain asked, what is it that bestows beauty to a human being, to man? And so the Bedouin said, knowledge, accompanied with forbearance. And then Imam al-Hussain said, what if he does not have? Then the Bedouin said, then he should have wealth accompanied with generosity. And then Imam Hussain said, what if he does not have that? Then the Bedouin said, then he should have poverty accompanied with patience, with sabr. And then Imam al-Hussain right away took everything that he had, and as he promised, through this teaching and answering process with the Bedouin, he gave everything that he had. This is just one example of many stories, and I'll end with this final story where Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, a Bedouin came to him also in need, and Imam al-Hussain was in prayer, and he broke his prayer. He broke his prayer to answer this Bedouin, this other person who was in need, and he told Qanbar, slave, he told him, give him everything that we have. Everything that we have right now, give it to him. And that's how Imam al-Hussain was. Imam al-Hussain would not just give a little bit, he would give everything, take care of everything. So a sustainable mind in terms of fulfilling the hajat of the mu'mineen. And that's And that's how he was. That's the example that he showed us through the words, his words, and through also his deeds. And our one final story before the adhan. On the night of Ashura, we of course know that Imam al-Hussain gathered his family and the followers. And there were many followers who were there. And he told them, look, the night is here, and I know that they want me. I don't want to put you in harm's way. So you guys can go. Don't worry. I'm not going to hold it against you. Use that night to go. And yes, there was a significant portion that left. But you know what? What, my dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters, while they were leaving, he told his family members, the Bani Hashim, go and give them provisions. Go give them food and water, what they need to exit and to leave. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. To such extent that Imam al-Hussain was generous even to his enemies and even to his followers who abandoned him on the night before Ashura. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. السلام عليك يا سيدي يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وما بقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني بزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل